Pain is the place most men try to escape. I went there on purpose, and it changed everything. I'm speaking to you not just as a psychologist, but as a woman who has sat across from thousands of men at their lowest moments. Men who were successful on paper and empty inside. Men who were strong for everyone else and silently collapsing alone. And if I'm honest, this work didn't begin in textbooks or degrees. It began in my own pain. For a long time, I believed purpose was something you discovered after life rewarded you. I was wrong. Purpose is forged when life strips you down, when the identity you relied on stops working, when the rules you followed no longer protect you. Pain doesn't arrive to destroy you. It arrives to initiate you. What I noticed early in my work is that men are rarely taught how to metabolize pain. You're taught to endure it, distract from it, outperform it. But unprocessed pain doesn't disappear. It hardens into resentment, passivity, or quiet rage. And then one day, you wake up and realize you've been living from defense instead of direction. My journey into masculine leadership didn't come from wanting to fix men. It came from watching men disappear inside their own lives. Good men, capable men, men who did everything they were told would make them respected, loved, chosen, and still felt invisible. That contradiction fascinated me, and it haunted me. I began asking a question most people avoid. What if masculinity isn't broken, but unfinished? What if many men never received the second half of their initiation? Strength without self-trust, discipline without direction, responsibility without meaning? That's not leadership, that's survival. The pain that shaped my path wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, a slow realization that intellect without embodiment changes nothing. That insight without action is another form of avoidance. I saw men who could explain their patterns perfectly and still repeat them. That's when I understood. Masculine leadership isn't about knowing more. It's about standing somewhere internally that doesn't collapse under pressure. Purpose didn't arrive when things got easier. It arrived when I stopped trying to bypass discomfort, when I stopped cushioning truth, when I stopped mistaking empathy for permission to stay small. Purpose clarified when I realized my role wasn't to comfort men, but to challenge them without shaming them. Here's the truth most men were never told. Your pain is not proof of failure. It's proof that something in you refuses to live unconsciously. Pain signals that the old strategy no longer fits the man you're becoming, and becoming always feels like disorientation before it feels like power. Masculine leadership begins the moment you stop asking, "How do I feel better?" and start asking, "What is this trying to shape me into?" That question changes everything. It turns pain into information, fear into feedback, confusion into a threshold. This is where my work was born. Not from answers, but from witnessing what happens when men stop running from themselves, when they stop negotiating their own authority, when they stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing who they will be. If any part of you feels seen right now, stay with me. Because the path from pain to purpose doesn't require you to be perfect. It requires you to be honest. The moment you stop running from pain is the moment purpose finds you. Most men think leadership is external, titles, achievements, influence, but true masculine leadership begins internally, in the silence where no one is watching, where no reward is promised. It's forged in the moments you choose integrity over comfort, accountability over excuses, courage over distraction. That's the crucible most men never enter because it feels unbearably lonely. I remember sitting with a man in my practice who had achieved everything he thought mattered: wealth, status, approval from his peers. And yet, he felt hollow. He confessed that every morning he woke up performing someone else's idea of a man. Every decision was filtered through expectations, past failures, and fear of losing respect. Sound familiar? This is the invisible cage most men live inside, and leaving it isn't a suggestion. It's a requirement for evolution. Here's something men rarely hear. Pain is neutral. It doesn't punish, it informs. And purpose is not found by waiting for external validation. It's discovered when you translate discomfort into clarity. Each setback, each rejection, each silent disappointment is data. It tells you where you're weak, where you're compliant, where you're avoiding yourself. And most men, tragically, interpret it as personal failure instead of a call to transformation. The journey from pain to purpose also exposes the gap between masculine power and masculine presence. Power without presence is coercion. Strength without direction is wasted energy. Many men chase success thinking it will fill the void, only to discover the emptiness grows alongside the accolades. Purpose requires presence. It asks, "Who are you when no one is applauding?" That's where leadership begins. Masculine leadership also demands emotional sovereignty. Too many men are emotionally reactive, chasing approval, avoiding conflict, or numbing themselves to remain acceptable. This doesn't build respect, it builds dependence. True leadership means owning your emotions without letting them own you, and creating a space where others can do the same. That's the essence of influence that isn't coercive, but magnetic. I also learned that accountability is non-negotiable. Leadership isn't earned by talent, charm, or luck. It's claimed by men who consistently act in alignment with their principles, even when inconvenient. This is uncomfortable for most men because the world rewards compromise and convenience, not courage. But the men I've worked with who embrace this reality experience transformation that money, titles, and praise could never deliver. Pain doesn't ask permission. Purpose doesn't come softly. They both demand attention. And the first step is radical honesty with yourself, with your mistakes, with your fears. Until you face the truth of who you've been and where you've compromised, growth remains theoretical. Once you embrace it, leadership becomes a living practice, not a concept. I speak about this because I've seen the difference it makes. Men who move from passive existence to active authority aren't just more respected, they feel alive. They wake up with direction, make decisions with clarity, and attract relationships that mirror their integrity. That's the transformation from pain to purpose. And it's always available to the man willing to step into discomfort rather than run from it. Here's what I want you to consider. Are you letting pain pass you by, or are you translating it into purpose? Think about that, because the answer determines whether you continue performing for the world or finally perform for yourself. Purpose isn't built in comfort. It's forged in the tension between who you were and who you refuse to remain. Most men resist this because tension is uncomfortable, even frightening. Growth demands confrontation with fear, ego, patterns, and mistakes. Avoidance feels safe, but safety is an illusion that quietly robs men of their authority, confidence, and presence. I've seen it destroy potential silently. One of the first things men must realize is that leadership is not about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself. The man who can regulate his impulses, own his choices, and remain grounded in chaos earns influence effortlessly. He doesn't shout, he doesn't manipulate. His presence alone communicates stability, strength, and reliability. That is magnetic. That is purposeful masculine energy in action. I worked with a man who was brilliant, successful, but addicted to external validation. Every interaction, every decision, every emotional reaction was filtered through, "What will they think?" He was exhausted and empty. The shift came the moment he decided his value would come from himself first, not others. He stopped negotiating for approval and started negotiating with reality. The difference wasn't subtle, it was radical. His presence became undeniable, his energy coherent, his decisions firm. That is the transition from performance to leadership. Masculine purpose also demands sacrifice, not the hollow kind you hear about in cliches, but the disciplined sacrifice of habits, relationships, and beliefs that no longer serve your growth. Men cling to comfort, to convenience, to identity illusions because it feels safer than facing themselves fully. But safety without evolution is stagnation. Every man who achieves mastery over himself first burns what no longer serves him. It's painful, it's lonely, and it's essential. Another truth most men overlook: influence is inseparable from clarity. A man who knows his boundaries, values, and mission doesn't need to justify himself. He acts with authority because he is anchored internally. Confusion, compromise, or hidden agendas dilute influence, even when charisma is high. True leadership is not performed, it is embodied. Emotional resilience is also critical. Life will test your patience, your confidence, and your morality. The man who can feel deeply, respond wisely, and maintain integrity in the face of provocation becomes someone others follow instinctively. Pain will continue to arrive, but it no longer dictates your direction. It informs it. Every challenge becomes a training ground. Every failure becomes a lesson. Every fear becomes a compass. Purpose is inseparable from accountability. Leaders don't wait for recognition or permission. They claim it through consistent action. They are not perfect, they are present. They embrace responsibility for their choices, their failures, and their growth. This ownership distinguishes the man who lives unconsciously from the man who commands his life. Here's the uncomfortable but necessary truth: pain and purpose are inseparable. You cannot escape suffering and achieve leadership. You cannot chase comfort and awaken influence. Your journey begins the moment you stop asking the world to approve you and start asking yourself to lead. Now ask yourself, what are you tolerating that your future self will regret? What patterns are keeping you small? The answers lie in the tension you refuse to confront, and it's in that tension that masculine purpose waits for you. The final step from pain to purpose is integration. This is where most men stumble because they think growth is dramatic or public. It isn't. True evolution is quiet, internal, and relentless. It's the man who has been broken, confronted himself, endured discomfort, and now stands grounded in his own authority. He doesn't need applause. He doesn't need permission. He simply acts. That is masculine leadership fully realized. I've watched men transform when they embrace this. They stop seeking approval in relationships, at work, or in social circles. They stop performing for validation and start performing for impact. Their decisions are no longer reactive. Their energy is no longer diffused. Every choice, every interaction, every challenge becomes a reflection of internal alignment rather than external expectation. This is why purpose is magnetic. It radiates from a place beyond ego or circumstance. Purpose also rewires relationships. When a man claims his authority internally, women, peers, and colleagues respond differently. Not because he's controlling, but because he embodies clarity, decisiveness, and respect for himself. Influence comes naturally when boundaries are enforced, values are embodied, and presence is unwavering. Men who master this don't need to chase. They naturally draw connection, respect, and opportunity. Another critical truth: purpose is cumulative. Every challenge you face, every setback, every pain point, every moment of discomfort is an ingredient in the man you are becoming. You can't shortcut this process. You can't outsource it. You can't wait for it to arrive. Each experience is data, some of it harsh, some of it subtle, but all of it guides your evolution. Ignoring it keeps you small. Embracing it makes you formidable. I also teach men that leadership without self-care and emotional sovereignty is unsustainable. Masculine authority is not aggression. It's not domination. It's measured, intentional, and sustainable energy that can handle life's pressure without crumbling. Men who neglect this eventually burn out emotionally, socially, or physically. Purpose without balance is a brittle form of influence. Strength must be tempered with awareness. Finally, the journey from pain to purpose is deeply personal. No one can walk it for you. Advice, mentorship, or guidance can illuminate the path, but the steps must be taken by you. The work is uncomfortable because it requires you to confront fear, ego, doubt, and your own limitations. And yet, that confrontation is precisely what makes you unshakable. Now, I want you to reflect personally. Think of your life as an equation: pain plus action, avoidance, us purpose. Where are you subtracting too much from yourself? Where are you avoiding responsibility? Where could you convert pain into meaningful action? Write your answer in the comments, honestly. If this video spoke to you, like it. Subscribe for more guidance on masculine leadership, relationships, and self-mastery. And share this with a friend who needs to step into his purpose before life forces it upon him. Your transformation doesn't wait, and neither should theirs.